Now, from New York, you are listening to Extra Time, presented by AT&T 5G. I'm Andrew Wiebe with my partners in soccer, David Goss. An extra special Thursday, we have Michael Lahoud in the building, virtually, of course, and producing Anders is doing his thing behind the scenes. A big show today coming up from the AT&T 5G virtual studios. Misery. Nothing but CCL misery. Predictable misery we can wallow in together because it's like a lukewarm pool. It's like a pool that's just a perfect temperature. You dip your toe in the water and at first it feels cold, but once you jump in, you're used to it and you get used to it quickly. Revs are out. They had a 3-0 lead. They're out. They go to Mexico. They lose in PKs. Rough stuff for them. Montreal are out. Seattle, you are our only hope. So we'll recap CCL. What's going on there? We will regretfully inform you that an all-MLS semifinal is already dead,
no, it's not.
Dusted, gone. Yeah, it is. Well, on one side, we were talking last week about 4.
For sure,
like,
but you just said
could
Seattle's
it be all?
Our only hope, which is not true because NYCFC are still alive.
That's true. Yeah. It doesn't feel like it because they went down to Guatemala and really tested our nerves in every possible way. MLS news and notes. Gyasi Zardes on the block, not on the block. Where would he or should he go? We'll talk about that. St. Louis City signed Dortmund keeper Roman Bürki, which is interesting. We'll talk through that as well. And we'll preview week 4. National TV games on Saturday. LA, Orlando on Univision, TuneIn, and Twitter. That's at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, And then Austin, good thing we have Michael, hosting Seattle on Sunday on FS1 at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll talk through early MVP candidates there, do our ESPN Plus games, and in the mailbag, the most underrated DPs of all time. Not the most overrated. We always talk about that, but the most underrated. And let's start with this, Michael, for I hope a positive note before we hit CCL. The False Nine wants to know what the Lahoud mood is. Wants us to talk to you about the Lahoud mood. What is the Lahoud mood other than a Dr. Seuss-esque rhyme?
I can't believe we're doing this on Extra Time, but why not? So the Lahoud mood came from Adrian Healy and I for our Austin FC broadcasts. We were trying to do a keys to the game sort of segment, and it was off the cuff, trying to have fun during an expansion season that had a lot of ups, few downs, as we could say, in terms of results. But the Lahoud mood is really how I'm feeling about the game and what teams need to do, and Austin FC in particular need to do. But really, it's just any team, any game, keys to a game to make either team successful. And so I will be doing my Lahoud mood, if I may, for today's Extra Time show.
We will we'll have you do it for everything, probably. For Austin, who are on a run here, and despite losing their last one in Portland, have a chance to get some revenge against Cascadia with Seattle in town. We'll do it for CCL. Before we get to that, though, remember, go sign up for Pick 6, presented by BetMGM. Sign up, fill out your picks, and play. Great prizes available for that one. And MLS Fantasy is obviously open. Our Fantasy League is open. Go sign up for that. We will make sure we tweet out that link so you have something to get at. Some other stuff. Of course, MLSsoccer.com, your home for everything you need to know about MLS, whether it be schedule or scores or highlights or commentary, etc. We are going to be covering in depth, of course, the U.S. men's national team and the Canadian men's national team on their road, we hope, to the World Cup. Roster for the U.S. is supposed to come out tonight, Thursday night on ESPN at 6 p.m. Eastern, so we won't be talking about that. But we will have club and country watch-along shows on Twitch and YouTube for every single game through the World Cup. So we've been doing post-game shows. You're used to that. We will still do post-game shows, but we're changing things up a little bit. We are going to, as we did on Decision Day, as you guys did, Dave, I believe you were in D.C., but as the crew did on opening day of this year, we are going to watch these games with you on Twitch and YouTube Live. Our first show, DeMarcus Beasley will be with us watching those games along with us. So tune in to, second screen us. If not just for the reactions as the U.S. go to Mexico, go to Azteca, we see how that goes. And, of course, we'll be watching the Canada game during that window as well. We'll do that for all these final 3 World Cup qualifying windows, all the March to the World Cup friendly games as they prepare, and then all the World Cup games as well with special guests from around the league. I can't give you any names yet, but we're getting current MLS players to come on with us, big-time media personalities. Think of it as a fun second screen. If you can't be at a bar or you're not watching with somebody else or you are and you just want to hear what we have to say during it, come hang with us on Twitch and YouTube. Sorry, Dave, I cut you off. What's up?
I was going to say I think the Canada roster is going to drop on Sunday, so we'll have that on Monday on ETR.
Perfect. Yeah, Monday we'll talk through all of that for you. All right, what's the Lahoud mood, on CCL after Tuesday and Wednesday night? Anders threw this in the rundown. And this was a mistake on my part. I wrote in my intro for last Thursday's show, or maybe Monday, I don't know which one, the tides might be changing in the Concacaf Champions League. Should have known. Tides don't change. They're relatively predictable, these tides. And they were predictable in this case.
Well, for anyone who was watching the matches last night, strap yourselves in, get a life jacket, because the teams were sinking into those games, and the Lahoud mood for the Concacaf Champions League is astonished. I am really flabbergasted. That's the heartfelt word. I'm flabbergasted at what I saw last night in both games. I think, not to get too much into the weeds, but the key to both of those games was how the games was managed. I think if you are going to progress in CONCACAF Champions League play at this stage, you have to manage the chess match of both legs. And I think that's what bit one team in the backside and almost bit the other team as well.
Yeah, look, and we're not even talking about Montreal, who just had a deficit going in. I had a former MLS player who's played in these matches before, who I've talked a lot about CCL with in the past, just as we both watch games and text back and forth, and we're like, can you believe this is happening? And I'm always on the side of like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And he is always on the side of, oh my God, how could you not believe it? This is what this competition is. I believe at I think 2-0 Pumas last night, he texted me and said, I'm infuriated just remembering what it was like to play in this godforsaken competition. His text was, please don't tell me that you fell for the CCL trap again. We fell for that trap, Dave. And you and I in the group chat last night were really
broken,
having a moment. Yeah. You know, we were on the therapist's couch.
I did it on my timeline as well. So if you want to go back and look at that.
How do you feel?
I feel broken. Quite honestly, it was... I've watched this competition for a while. I actually was looking back. I think I would say about 16 years that I can remember watching this exact competition, hoping for an MLS team to win it. I can remember specific moments where I thought it was going to happen, and then I can't believe it didn't. The oldest one being, because I looked it up just to make sure, Brian Chang and Houston Dynamo 07 at Pachuca. They lost 5-2. If they had scored one more goal, they would have gone through. Ching goes up for a header, and somehow it hits his shoulder. And I still can picture that moment because I've been waiting for this for such a long time. And I was taking a victory lap the last 6 days. I thought out of leg one, Revs, Seattle, NYCFC over. And you tried to bait me on Monday into an all-MLS semifinal, which I refused. I refused to be baited into because I knew the other shoe was going to drop. I just assumed that other shoe was Cruz Azul. I did not assume that it was going to be the Revs going to Pumas, who lost 2-1 on the weekend in a rivalry game, whose only person who has scored a goal in 2 weeks is Fabio Alvarez from the LA Galaxy, who wasn't even good in MLS, who was not even available for this game. So instead they started Bofo Salcedo, who, respect to Bofo, because I think he's a good player. I wasn't ready for this. I was under the assumption that the Revs would score and that as many goals as they gave up, they'd still get through because they had done enough work in the first leg. And now I am really scared about Thursday night.
Thursday night being tonight, Sounders, of course, going to Leon with an identical 3-0 lead. If you didn't watch, you're under a rock somehow, some way. You don't know what happened to the Revs. They lost in regulation 3-0. Had they scored, they would have gone through. Had they scored and Pumas scored another, they would have gone through just on away goals. Of course, they didn't. And then in PKs, predictable heartbreak. This is just what happens. Here is some numbers for you. MLS teams all time in Mexico record. And let me do the math real quick. Yeah, 69 games. Nice. 5 wins, 54 losses, and 10 draws. 5 wins, 54 losses, and 10 draws. It's not great. MLS teams in 2-legged series against Mexican opposition, 10 wins, 43 losses. MLS teams when the second leg is in Mexico, which of course it was for Pumas, and it will be tonight for Leon and Sounders. 3 wins, 28 losses. This is where we should have gone back to the Kalen Carr mantra, which is cautious pessimism. We were cautiously optimistic. We should have been cautiously pessimistic, and we got caught up, as we always do, in sort of the That like we feel like the tide is rising, our boat is rising, and we forget that the flip side of that is that the tide is going to go down, and we are going to go down with it, and you have to be prepared for that moment. Now, look, there is some positivity here. We'll talk Sounders in a little bit. If the Sounders advance tonight, knock on wood, until tonight, that would at least guarantee an MLS finalist, the fourth in this competition's history. If the Sounders do not advance tonight, NYCFC would be the final team standing, and they would have to knock off León. And on the other side, if they got through, they would have to go to Mexico City because it's Pumas and Cruz Azul who've advanced out of the other side of the bracket, pushing aside the Revs and Montreal. Let's talk Revs and Montreal and get into the nitty-gritty. It snowed. It was a New England game. There was an advantage for the Revs. The Revs ran out to a 3-0 lead, and Buxa was the guy.
We play football, soccer in this weather?
Not possible. Can we? Never. Well, turned out Pumas couldn't, but Pumas sure could when they went back to Mexico City to Estadio Universitario. So the Revs went to defend the lead. I think that's pretty clear. They went to sit back, absorb, and hopefully hit on the break and get that goal that would allow them to lose 4-1 and still advance through on away goals. And there were some complications here. When I saw the news pregame that Andrew Farrell was not available, that he was back in Boston because of soreness, and they didn't have Henry Kessler, my stomach turned. I was like, that is, if you could choose one player that you would not want to be out for this game, it is probably Andrew Farrell, and I'm including Carles Gil in that mix. That's how important he is to what they do, whether it be just in his mobility back there, his experience, having a little bit of familiarity between those two center backs going against a Pumas team that might not be at the top of Liga MX is going to create chances. So there you already had a troublesome moment. There's no Matt Turner. We know that. Earl Edwards has been good. He was good in this game, or good enough, except for one moment. Turns out, of course, with goalkeepers, those moments always turn out to be crucial. But yeah, so no Matt Turner to save them as he was there all last year when they set a points record. Obviously, Tejan Buchanan is gone. So your other difference maker, 1v1 in transition, in open space, sort of your wild card, he's not around either. So you can't directly compare this team to the team that piled up the points last year because it is not the same team. And we saw that. I actually thought, Dave, after the first half, and they allowed one goal in the first half, that they were in pretty good shape. Adam Buxa had a great opportunity 17 minutes in that he did nothing with, basically. A little floated ball to the back post from Bo, from a pass from Heel after a little 1v1 moment, and it's a volley opportunity, and he doesn't do anything with it. He looked lackadaisical in the moment. His footwork was wrong. The finish was wrong. The technique was wrong. But those are the sort of chances that change CCL matches away when you have a 3-0 lead. If you get that goal, you're up 4-0, you have an away goal, that might shut this whole thing down. You might eliminate hope for Pumas. They didn't. And once that goal came after halftime, I just knew.
Yeah.
I just knew. We've been here before. We've been on this ride before. You go to the top, and then the roller coaster goes straight down. That's just the way it works.
And the Buxa chance, and I talked about this on MLS today, so if you want to hear my full therapy session, you can go there, because it was an intense one. It's DeJuan Jones, who has emerged as one of your most important players, wins a tackle. Carlos Gil beats a defender with great feet because he's an elite player. He plays Gustavo Bo into space, who's your other DP, who squares it across or puts it over the top for Adam Buxa, who's your 25-year-old Polish full international alongside Robert Lewandowski, designated player center forward that Serie A teams want to sign. There are things we can complain about. There are things that can change both in MLS and the way you structure teams, whatever. That's all supposed to work. Those are the things that are supposed to work, should work, and if they do, this game's over. Buxa's,
and by the way, worked in the first leg. Buxa had 2 goals.
That's another thing we do have to come back on, which was at
least in the results
as
side.
As much as we said Seattle should have won 4-5-0, which I'm worried about now.
Agreed.
Buxa should have had, and the guy scored 2 goals, right? You're never going to expect a hat trick, but he had chances there. And I think when he misses this chance, in his body language from what you see, and when you look back at the last game, I think you are starting to see a guy who took a little while to get started last year, took a while when he came into this league. I don't know that he's there. He's at the level he was in September yet, and that's a little frustrating. We didn't talk about this before, it sort of just popped in my head, but this weekend, when I opened up my phone and saw the starting lineup for the Revs and Andrew Farrell was in there, I was shocked. But it's Bruce's team. He knows what he's doing, whatever. Andrew Farrell now does not travel. So he played 75 minutes, I think, in the snow against RSL at home, and then was unavailable for you in CCL. I don't know that anyone asked Bruce about this after the game. I'd love to see someone ask him about it going into the next game or after the next game. But that is part of what's happening as well. Schmetzer says we want to compete on every level. We're going to try and win. Fine, try and win. That's great. But when you have Henry Kessler already out and Matt Turner out, was Saturday against RSL at home in a blizzard not a chance to protect the all-time leading appearance player in your club's history, who is your starting center back? You got me again. I'm upset.
Josie out there had said on this show that like he thinks what it's going to take is for a team to put sort of like exclusive energy into CCL.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's maybe one of those moments. And look, Bruce, not a guy who loves to be asked tactical questions or to be second guessed. We know that. That's fine. Here's what he had to say afterwards. Michael, quote, "We're not surprised the way that the game looked. We knew it was going to look like that, and the altitude was going to be a factor. And give them credit, Pumas, we made too many mistakes today."
I think a couple mistakes that were made was, I already said it, how the game was managed. You go back, the writing was a bit on the wall based on Saturday's result, where New England Revolution, they had a 2-0 lead. It was a foreshadowing of sorts. It's a different competition, but the DNA of the disaster is still the same. You have a lead, and then you give it up against RSL. Mind you, that's at home. Now your team is that much more fatigued. There's doubt that creeps in your mind when you're taking a lead into a difficult place to play. You already have the lead at home, both in CCL play and then in MLS play. And now in a short amount of time, in less than 10 days' time, you're playing a significant game. And I think this is a game that came too early for the New England Revolution in a lot of ways. I think it came too early because of some of the missing pieces and the new arrivals. Omar Gonzalez and Bell, their partnership, I think this game came too early for them, but you still have to rise to the occasion and deliver in Concacaf Champions League play. And formation-wise, tactically, I think that's where Bruce may have gotten it wrong. New England Revolution, after the Gold Cup last season, they tinkered with a back three. I know Tejan was out of the rotation and came back, but they were able to get results. Now you don't have a Tejan Buchanan, but I was surprised to see them go with their usual 4-3-1-2 into Mexico. When you go into Mexico, especially Mexico City, the altitude becomes a factor. The teams from Mexico go all out, and it would have been a better setup. Hindsight's 2020, but I think it would have been a better setup to go more defensive and to hit them on the counter. If you're going to hit them on the counter, maybe put Books up top, Bo and Heel underneath, and that's your front three that you hit the counter, and then you can bring Josie in and bring different pieces in as the game goes on.
The question is, who's that third? There's the third center back.
Yeah, so you can't ignore that they're on their third and fourth center back, and I think at this point, Earl Edwards Jr. is the second string keeper, but coming into the year, he was third, right? Because Brad Knighton's also out. So you can't ignore that that's a reality for this team. I agree with Michael. I think, and I've beat this drum now for 6 months, I think Maciel needs to start alongside Polster in big games. Now, the goals did not come from breaking down this team in the middle, but I think what you saw was everyone sagging inside because they were worried about Omar and John Bell behind them not being capable of defending by themselves. So I think you see Jawan Jones late to close out on the opening goal because he's further inside than he normally would be. I think you saw it with Leggett and McNamara and Tristison as well when they were on the side of that diamond, or the two outside guys in that three, as Michael mentioned. I think you saw the mental issues with not having that confidence in what's going on behind you throughout the game. And so I agree. I think it could have been handled differently. I also think we saw the Revs struggle with this Saturday. We saw them struggle with it last year, even though they won, because Matt Turner is not just good, he is all-time great game changer in goal, is that the Revs don't have a middle ground to sort of kill out games. They can't squeeze the life out of games. So they can hit you and score, and they can sit in numbers and try and protect. But when they sort of play in between, they get cut open. and they give up opportunities. They did it last year. It happened in the playoffs, and now they do it again in this game.
It just... it's the inevitable march, man. It's like... It felt like deja vu. It felt like something I'd lived through before. I was trying to bargain internally throughout the game of like, all right, Pumas, we'll give you 2 if you give us 1. Okay, Pumas, we'll give you 4, but you got to give us 1 back. And there were chances. Buxa had the first. Buxa had 1 in the second half where he kind of like turnover by Pumas and the ball finds his foot. He's leaning back and he fires over. Omar had the header. Like that's the formula, right? Like you might get 3 half chances, 1 good chance, 2 half chances. If you don't finish, this is where we end up. It's just really sad, man, because damn it, this Revs team was one that I thought they might have it. I thought they might have the ability to get through. I thought they might have the top end talent. I do have the top end talent. Like before we go any further, Carlos Gil is a magician. Carlos Gil is an incredible player, and I go back to it, and I don't know if there's straw men, if there's like 3 people that like to get my Twitter mentions and be like, Carlos Gil is super overrated. Hell no, he's not. Like anything positive that happened for this team, anything in the second half where you're thinking, oh my God, who's urging them on, who's giving them an opportunity to get the goal? It's Carlos Gil, literally taking people 1v1. Ball on his foot going 30 yards, then getting 1v1 on the end line, getting a corner kick, getting a cross in, finding the right ball. There was one moment in this game where he shoots to the back post where he probably should have shot to Buxa or crossed to Buxa, and I think 99% of the time he would have, but he's like, no, F this. It's on me. Like, I have to take responsibility for this moment, and it kills me to see him go out in this way, and it sucks that they didn't get Cavalli. Like, I know that might be something minor, but you said it, Michael, like, it just came a little bit too early for them. They have a bunch of new pieces. It's early in the season. Yeah. I know it wouldn't have been a test probably, or maybe it would have been, but just more reps could have helped. And just to close out games, even just that.
We're talking about...
I want to make...
Okay, you go first.
Sorry, I want to finish up that point. You're such a gentleman, Gasman. That's why I love you. But I want to finish up that point. So if you look historically at the teams in Concacaf Champions League play that have progressed through this mountain of a moment and then find themselves in finals... their DPs are the ones who deliver, and not just deliver, but they finish off those moments. A player that I had the misfortune of playing against, but I think is such a CONCACAF Champions League talisman is Ignacio Piatti. You think of that Montreal team. On paper, they did not. That was, I would say they didn't belong, because you never know. You have to play the games, but they were surprising folks because they had a DNA about them, which was, okay, Ignacio Piatti, you are the one player who's going to tee it up on a plate for us. And you have the likes of a Jack McInerney at the time scoring goals, R.I.P. to him, but scoring goals like against teams from Mexico, because your designated player, a player like a Carlos Gil, who is creating, who is putting it on a platter. This is where your big money players now have to support him and deliver. And it takes you back to Saturday's game leading into this. Why not start Josie against RSL?
Yeah.
I mean, I go back to Cavalli. I know that it's, again, maybe that's just a time for Buxa to get a couple goals.
Do not mention Cavalli again on this show.
I don't think you
banned it from the chat. It is banned. You cannot.
No, Anders just said Anders said they're all frauds. Sounders only true champions. So don't put words in Anders' mouth.
You
all right?
Cannot. And I thought Herc said this the best. This was a failure of performance. There are no excuses external that fit into this.
It's not an excuse.
Playing
it's just it's a moment of preparation.
Twice in the cold 3 weeks ago and a month ago is not the reason this team didn't win. It was on performance. And Michael, I agree with you on the DP side. Now, to me, what I was excited about this year and what I felt like I really saw for the Sounders last week was the middle of the roster being good enough, right? Because MLS teams have had elite DPs. Piatti, Javinko, Josie, Michael, guys like that. It was that middle of the roster where it feels like the Revs, because of the way they've hit in the draft, right? They've got 2 borderline elite fullbacks that they were able to draft. They were able to bring in Leggett because they have the allocation money because of the Tejan sale. It felt like that's where this roster was good enough to compete with the Mexican team. And I think that's what Seattle, both the academy with Obed Vargas and Atencio and what you're getting and Alex Roldan and guys like that. That's where we thought the gap was that MLS teams were closing, and it felt like these two teams in the Revs and the Sounders, and I think NYCFC, they had closed that gap and got there. That clearly was not a
But let me challenge you on that one. And I'm not going to say the word that I cannot say anymore. But Sebastian Lletget has talked about how he's not fully comfortable yet in the role that he has
would
and
not
within the
change
team.
from 2 games against unknown Haitian team.
Well, and
I'm not saying it would be like from 0 to 100, but it might be from 0 to 20. You might have had opportunities for John Bell and Omar to play together a little bit more because you can rest the other guys. I'm just saying there's more reps, more of a rhythm, more of a game rhythm going into this, more of an opportunity to even just protect leads and have in your mind, okay, here's how we do it, we can do it. It's not the same competition, and I'll let this go now. And let's ask the bigger question. This is a Revolution team that knows they're going to lose, maybe for sure Matt Turner, it seems, and maybe Buxa in the summer. There's no guarantee that they'll have an opportunity to, or they'll be in an MLS Cup final, etc. They got to earn that, blah, blah, blah. They were in this competition with an opportunity to move into the semifinals. They were in this competition with an opportunity to make history. How disappointing, how much of a failure is this to fall short in this way, in this moment, for this Revs team, given how they're built and what's going to change for them?
I think failure. Oh, it is what it is. It is a failure. I was going to be super nice. It is a failure. It's not catastrophic if you look at their bigger body of work that they have ahead of them. Yes, in the Concacaf Champions League competition, whenever you have a 3-0 lead going to Mexico, it's been proven that no lead is safe. But the fact that they got out to 3-0 in the first leg, that's a big step forward for MLS teams. But it goes back to my earlier point of the timing of when these sort of games come in. If this game happens in May or June for a team like New England, they do not lose this game because their game management, both by Bruce and the players, that takes time to build with a new group that had a formula that got them a lot of points, got them the supporter shield last year. There's just too many moving pieces for this team going on at the same time when you have a monster game like that happening, and I think it cost them in the end.
So,
okay, how about this, Dave? Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to be a bit more dramatic. I think that, listen, Supporters Shield winner, there's talent there. Michael's right. This team will probably be okay. But the other side of this is we are seeing how human they are without Matt Turner, which is going to be a reality this year. We are seeing maybe the step back from just playing at a high level for so many games. And we've seen the effect that this can have on a TFC, right? On an LAFC. We've seen the knock-on of CCL failure early in the season, both physically from what you put into it and then how your body has to recover, and then mentally. And so this could be a dangerous moment for New England in saying, coming off of that, first of all, what do they have to prove? Coming out of last year, the only thing they had to prove was that they could win one-off knockout games.
Correct.
They cannot do that outside of Open Cup now until the playoffs. So I wonder mentally where they're at week in and week out. And the conversation around them is going to be this. Now, as I think we talked about this with Philly in the past, we're talking about this with Colorado. Like, wake me up in October with these two teams because there's nothing you can really show me in the regular season now that's different than what you've done over the last year or two. Though this was the moment that you could prove that something was different. And so I think that's worrying for the Revs. And I think that the absence of Matt Turner and sort of what he can mean is worrying. Earl Edwards Jr. has been good to great over the last 5 games. They drew at Portland. They barely beat Dallas. They lost in that comeback to RSL. They've now lost to Pumas, and they beat Pumas. So in good to great for him compared to Matt Turner being elite, that's sort of the difference we've seen. And I think all of that, there are no answers now for all of that until we see it at a high level.
It is a bummer because I've really enjoyed how well Earl has played so far. That third goal, Bofas Acedo, ball's right at his hands. Unfortunately, it goes through him. That's the goal that sends it to PKs. And of course, if that doesn't go in, Pumas is going to be thrown against the wall. So very, very possible that another goal gets scored. So that's a bummer.
It also might be the goal that gets Bofo a TAM contract.
Nice. Love that. Yeah, and then PKs. I thought the Bruce close up after the legit sky ball was pretty classic Bruce. What the F was that, or F what was that? Yeah, just didn't get it done in that moment, and just seems like more often than not MLS teams don't. What was more disappointing, says Tyler, maybe Rapids or Revs going out in the way that they went out?
Oh, yeah, it's fresh in all our minds. You got to go to the Revs. Colorado, the expectation wasn't as high, I don't think, because of what New England did. What Colorado did last season to get to this point was incredible. And shout out to Robin Fraser, former coach of mine, for the magic he's creating up in the Rocky Mountains. But this Revs team, it's
the DPs, right? That's the difference, right? It's like one team has Carles Gil, Adam Buxa, and Gustavo Bo. One team doesn't.
They also scored 3 goals against this team.
Yeah.
There was no proof the Rapids are good in CONCACAF play. The Revs beat Pumas. They pummeled them. Just play okay.
But, God. Yeah, well, it goes to – so the New England Revolution, they've outscored teams. That's what they do. They score more than you, and they've had a goalkeeper who just lights out and could arguably be the starter for the U.S. men's national team, depending on what happens in these remaining qualifiers. So you have those things. They are not a team that has managed games well. You saw that in the NYCFC playoff game. They're a team that says, we're going to score more goals than you because we can. Because we have the reigning league MVP who's going to provide service. We have 2 elite strikers in the league in Gustavo Bo and Adam Buxa. And the front 3, I think more the attacking 2 of the strikers, they just didn't deliver. And those are the fine margins that cost you in knockout competition.
Yeah, we'll finish the Revs there. It just, it hurt. It hurt. And I really hope we don't have more of that hurt coming tonight. But I'm fully prepared for it if so. Montreal, they huffed and they puffed. They had some opportunities themselves, but similar to the Revs, they didn't get the goals. 1-1 draw for them at home against Cruz Azul, but Rio Antuna. Oh, God, all these old MLS throwbacks here killing us in the Champions League. It's like the legacy of Herc lives on. Like, watch out. They're going to come back and bite you, whether it's Saucedo or Antuna. Antuna gets the early goal, and that sort of feels like it closes it out. How much did you enjoy the Rudy Camacho goal, Kai Kamara getting 2 guys to help him up, scores that is just a perfect CONCACAF Champions League moment in every way. That was nice, but I don't think anybody expected Montreal to get through. Any thoughts on this one, Dave? Any bigger picture thoughts? I mean,
no, I think my reaction to this game was with the atmosphere, which was on point. Montreal had to jump on Cruz Azul. They had to get an early chance. They had to sort of be playing downhill, make it hectic. And there wasn't enough danger in the final third. And so I thought Kyoto got isolated, dropped his head, sort of disappeared from this game. And that can happen with him. That's sort of why you don't build a team around this guy. And then once that happened and you give up the goal, it's an uphill battle. You need 3. They really needed something special. And they don't really have those pieces in their team right now. So I thought this was a fine performance for Montreal. I thought they played with or better than Cruz Azul, and I thought they did the last 30 minutes down in Mexico as well. So this is still kind of the team I think they are. I think they're a playoff team. I think they're competitive. I think Georgie's gotten better, and he's special, and I'm sort of campaigning for him, and you'll probably know when you listen to this. I think he should be part of this USMNT camp that's coming up. I think he's earned it, and I think he can be a difference maker for this group. But when you talk about Buxa and Bo and Heel and Ladero and Roldan and Morris, you're kind of only talking about Georgie in that conversation for Montreal game in and game out, and that's what you saw against Cruz Azul.
I think where they got hamstrung in this game is when you have the home fans behind you, when you're playing in your home stadium, you know you have to go for it. You know you almost throw caution to the wind. But I thought that from the first whistle, they just went for it. And Cruz Azul did well to hit him on the counter and really make it a 3v3 against the 3 center backs of Montreal, and the wing backs got caught in transition too many times to start a match. But what I liked about Montreal is they didn't give up. They played it to the very end. They pushed numbers forward. And I like that battling spirit, because what they take in disappointment from exiting the competition, they can now apply to league play as a team that we know they're going to defend for their lives. We know they're not going to give you much because they put so many people behind the ball. But now there's a bit more grit to them offensively. And, Georgie, as you said, Gas, man, that this kid, I think he could be a future star in the making for the U.S. men's national team, has that creativity. And, he didn't, Torres was the one that whipped in the service, but hey, give him the second assist on that. Anything to boost him up, because we need more players like him in the national team fold.
I think what's going to be the deal for Montreal, we talk about this, is kind of like a microwave up top. Like, who's going to, is Romel going to have the blinders on and shoot it straight in the middle of goalkeepers, or is he going to finish those opportunities or cut the ball across? Less likely. Is Toye going to come back? Is Kai going to be productive? Is Torres going to be the player that you and I, Dave, get excited about when he has a good game, where he has the final product, or is he going to be one of those players where like, almost. Like, there's just a lot of that, I feel like, in their attacking core outside of Georgie.
It's definitely a box of chocolates up top, right? They have like 9 forwards. Who's hitting, who's not. I do think Mason Toye still is the guy. Every time I have Patrice on MLS Today and I demand an answer, he keeps saying, this is still on the timeline. David Goss chose to ignore the timeline and then gets upset when he's not back. So they still think he's there, and I do believe he is that player. And then when you put him next to Torres, because Torres is a creator, he's not a finisher. Georgie's both. He had 16 assists last year. You want to see him up his goal scoring, but he needs a threat in front of him to create those openings. I do still believe that in August and September, if Mason Toye is in form and fit, that this will be the right attacking pieces for this team that I think can compete in a playoff scenario in MLS.
I agree. One
thing to add to that is having just attacking depth at the striker position and those the front one or front two, depending on what they decide to play, that will only pay dividends if when your wingbacks get the ball, they serve it in the box. Right now, you're having Torres, you're having Georgie be the ones who are serving balls in the box. And a player that I'm thinking of when I say that is a one, we all love him, we all know him, a one, Kai Kamara. He's getting up there in age, but if you can now have a striker like that, who's going to get his starts, he's going to come off the bench at different times. If you can now have a striker like that who thrives off service, and you have wingbacks who are getting the attack and just pumping it in the box, climb the ladder, he can be a difference maker, but you got to have the service first.
All right, let's talk NYCFC and then Sounders, and then get into the weekend here. NYCFC did everything in their power to make
they warned us.
Possibly the most heartbreaking. That's not true. There's many others that are more heartbreaking because you have to go into the semis and finals to get to those. But they were up 3-1 after winning in Connecticut. They went through on away goals at 5-5.
They were up 5-2 at the latest with
correct.
2 away goals scored.
Correct.
So they basically were up 6-2 at that point.
Tati bent that free kick around the wall. Beautiful, by the way. Wonderful. Says he got that. He was watching YouTube videos and had seen the famous Brazilian Roberto Carlos one, and he was like, I could try that.
Show him something he can do it. We could just just throw this Don bike kick video up there.
Yeah, he tucked it right inside. Just start sending him YouTube clips. If I was Ronnie Dyla, I might do that. I might start sending those clips to everybody else. They bring up the bench.
Full album into his brain.
Start sending Maldini clips to some folks on the back line of midfield. Look, so just before half, Comunicaciones gets a goal back. And again, Comunicaciones has been good in this tournament. Tyus Magno makes it 2-1. And then Dyla makes 4 changes at 60 minutes. Off goes Alfredo Morales, in comes Keaton Parks. Off goes Maxi, in comes Thiago Andrade. Off goes Admonson, in comes Chris Gloucester. Off goes Castellanos, in comes Hebert. And then there's 2 goals in 3 minutes, like 69th to the 72nd. And then there's an 88th minute bombazo that puts Comunicaciones back into it. And they have been pushing this whole time, creating chances, hitting the post, putting NYCFC up against it. Here's what Dyla said. In the end, we got scared. You have to be more brave in this kind of situation. As I said, there was a young team, and I'm very, very happy that we get that kind of experience without getting any consequences out of it. Maxime Chenot, quote, "It's hard to celebrate. If you were there in a changing room, it was very quiet because we're all professionals, and even if we get qualification losing the game, we never get happy about that. I think it's going to give us a little bit of a good lesson, maybe a little bit more humility for the next leg." What do you think about those quotes, Michael?
That's a sign of a very professional team, and a team that you like hearing that, because the standards have been raised for NYCFC since winning MLS Cup. It's not just good enough to get through. There are certain teams that would be breathing a sigh of relief and still celebrating that they could potentially be the only MLS team in the semifinals. But that's a team that has leadership, and that could have gone sideways very quickly. But I like that. As a former player, those are the type of leaders, that's the type of message that you want to hear from a Chenot.
You concerned about the performance, Dave?
I don't think so. I think this is an NYCFC team that obviously their attacking ideas are clear. They're clean. I mean, they've been borderline lethal this year through CCL for sure. It was a miracle they didn't score against Vancouver. I'm fine with the letdown against the Galaxy. You're coming out of CCL, first game of the year, away, fine, whatever. So I don't worry about that. I think Maxi's in form, which is huge to see. I thought Alfredo Morales has been good to close the year. He's been good now. Keaton Park's slowly starting to come back in. I just think it was, and you can see when Talis Magno scores, there's a zoomed out view where Dyla immediately turns to his coaching staff. And I think they basically said, this thing's over. And they go with the 4 changes. And so I think he will have learned from that. No matter what the scoreline is in the semis, that's not going to happen, right? And so I don't worry about this group because Chris Gloucester's not a key part of this team. I don't think Keaton Parks will be put on his own again in central midfield on the road in Central America to have to sort of battle by himself. And in a semifinal, you probably don't take Tati off at all because at this point you're in the end game. Like, he's playing the next 4 games, 90 minutes, whatever it needs to be in CCL if they get there, because that's who he is for them. So I don't overall worry about what happened here. And I still come back to, there is something special about this Comunicaciones team. We saw it against Colorado, and you see it again here in the first leg and the second leg. So I don't think that there's a bigger structural issue. Now, I've gone back to this a couple times. The Revs game for NYCFC, they give up the goal to Tejan Buchanan. Tati gets the red card. They have to see it out in penalties. The Philly game, they should have had the advantage with those 9 players being out. They weren't able to push it for a lot of time. And then the Portland game, the Felipe Mora goal. They've had these setbacks, but they have responded to all of them. I mean, they won MLS Cup after all of that. So I look at, and as Michael said, the way they react to this, you know this is a group that they won't stew on it. They'll be better going forward. And I think they're one of the favorites to win this competition.
Jonathan Sanchez, who you love and has been inviting on the show forever, says, will NYCFC win CCL? No, Jonathan. Don't even, why even, I'm not going to put that respect on your name until the respect is earned. That's for every single team in this competition. I thought it was funny. I know maybe Revs fans were piling on because they thought their advancement was sure, but NYCFC fans and Revs fans had been going at it. And I think the blue side of New York enjoyed that Revs loss a little bit. And I would just warn you, you haven't been in the arena. You have not been in the arena yet, It's like a gladiator for the first time being like, I'm not afraid of man-eating lions, and then just getting pounced on the moment he goes through the walls. Wait a second. Now, the other thing, the context there that is important for NYCFC.
Didn't NYCFC get knocked out by Tigres and a Costa Rican team already in their CCL history? I think they've had some pretty tough CCL performances already.
But in Leagues Cup, they've had... No, I'm just kidding. They have played in Leagues Cup. But here's the thing about NYCFC that we do have to say. They went to Costa Rica, then they played in L.A., or they played in L.A., then they went to Costa Rica, one of those two. They had a game in Guatemala. They had 3 games on the West Coast. They had a home game in Hartford. They played just 1 game at Yankee Stadium. So they have been all over the place in this region to start the season. Maybe they were tired. I don't know. I think that is important context. There's not a ton of rest for them, and there's a lot of travel. So they got to figure it out for this next round, and they got to hope it's not Leon, in my opinion. We all got to hope that. We got to hope the Sounders get through, and they're up. Leon tonight, up 3-0. No Yaimar. He's hurt. Probably no Raul Ruiz Diaz. Maybe off the bench, but probably not. He's traveling. Nico Lodero's been training. Rui Diaz has been like running in circles at training, and that doesn't really count. We know.
More than you can do, though. You can't do that lateral turn.
That's fair.
I thought you were talking about me. I was like, oh, my feelings are hurt.
No, watch out.
Like, jeez, dude.
Hey, I'm in PT. We're trying to get these ankles right.
I think the Lahoud mood, you might be the sauciest host of MLS.
Probably. How much faith do you have in the Sounders right now in this particular moment with the game tonight? And we'll probably go back and dig these quotes up if we're right or wrong.
Sorry, you can take this one. You were gentleman last time.
I think the Sounders are set up to win a game like this, so I'm going to choose to have confidence.
Yeah.
What about you, Michael?
Come on. So here's why I have confidence in the Seattle Sounders. So when you're the team that is watching the implosion that happened in Mexico City last night, that's your warning sign. That's your warning shot of, hey, guys, this game is not over. This series is not over. There's still a lot to play for. And they're a Seattle team that is getting players. Their confidence is getting back. So Jordan Moore scoring a goal against the LA Galaxy, that's a very good thing going into this game. Freddie Montero reestablishing himself in the absence of a Rui Diaz. Those things are very good things. And I think when you have the boost of a Rui Diaz, whether he plays or not, we'll see. But when you have the boost of your best striker coming back into the roster, that's going to give the group a sense of confidence, added togetherness. But ultimately, watching New England, watching NYCFC, those are two examples that you have ahead of you that you have to learn from. You can learn the easy way, which is to watch them, or you can learn the hard way, which is we're back on this show talking que paso.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing the Sounders have, and a lot of these guys have, is experience in knockout round moments, experience with each other, and they do have CCL experience, so it hasn't gone particularly well for them in the past. We'll see what happens. I want to just make one point before we move on to the MLS side of things and dig into Week 4. It definitely seems like how you set up home and away is important for MLS teams. You want to be at home in the second leg, even though, I guess, look, we had home games in the second leg for RSL and Montreal in finals and still lost those. But anyway, the way this works is that you have to have the most points and the best goal differential through the semifinals to get through. We know NYCFC is there. We hope that the Sounders are there. They need to basically best Cruz Azul, which at this point has 10 points and a +4 goal differential with Pumas up next. So Cruz Azul could get to 16. Sounders could also get to 16. If they win, they'd have to win tonight and then win 2 legs against NYCFC if they got through. They would have a better goal differential at that point, and then it would be in their favor. Otherwise, you need Cruz Azul and Pumas to split and NYCFC to probably sweep and get through. But these are important notes here. And Leon could get up to 9 points as well if they win tonight. So these are things to watch as you think about, hey, can MLS win this? We were so confident just a couple of days ago that this would be a great possibility. Now it's feeling a little bit more touch and go.
Are you still upset that there'll be no Liga MX team in the final for an MLS team to beat? Does it still feel...
No, I have no reason to be upset now. We still got to get over the hump. We got to go to Mexico City. DFA, here we go.
So I just want to throw one more data point out, which is Cruz Azul and Pumas played this weekend. And Pumas went up 1-0 at home. Cruz Azul came back for a 2-1 win. So these are two teams that won. They're regional rivals, 2 Mexico City squads. And then Pumas came back last year in the Liguilla from a 4-goal second leg win to get over the hump and beat them. So these are two teams with history. These are two teams with rivalry. I'm pretty sure it's going to be an epic set of semifinals between them, and I'd be surprised if one of them won both games.
We will stay tuned. CCL, we love you. We hate you. You're the best. You're the worst. You age me. Even though I know what's going to happen. All right, MLS news and notes. Gyasi Zardes apparently available for trade, says Tom Bogert. And then reporters in Columbus say, well, they're not actively shopping him. Well, there's a middle ground here, right, folks? Like, if you call Columbus and you make an offer, they're open to the offer, as they should be. He's in the last year of his contract. He hasn't started any games so far for Caleb Porter. Miguel Berry has gotten that. So I think the message here is that Gyasi Zardes can be had for the right price. The question, Dave, is like, what's the right price? What's the right destination? Because Gyasi's in the last year of his deal. So if you're a team trying to trade for him, well, not only do you probably need to be signing him long term, so you need to have the space to do that. And I would guess maybe in the future, depending on the team, Gyasi could be a DP for like the Rapids, or he might be like a Max Tam player for another team that's building in a different way. but then that also affects the price tag, like that you would give the crew. Like, what do you make of this situation right now with Gyasi Zardes? And I will just say, told you so to everybody who said, why are you even talking about this in week one?
I think it's a really tough one. I think you have a situation where at this point in the market, most of the teams who would have ID'd Zardes as a need have already made another move. So now you're looking at teams that probably don't have a DP spot anymore. And you're looking at
Sporting Kansas City, for instance. They never had one.
Orlando, which I think is one that I would have brought up. And these were sort of the names we talked about with Ola Kamara. But Zardes is on a different level, game in and game out, than Ola Kamara is. And so you're looking at, I think, probably a depreciated market. And he's not the starter for your own team. So you can't really go out and convince everyone, well, Lewis Morgan went for $1.6 million. Brian White last year, before he scored a goal for Vancouver, he went for $500,000 in allocation, which isn't nothing. So it's got to be somewhere in that range. You can't tell. I think for Columbus, it's hard to argue to people, look, it's Gyasi Zardes. Look at his experience. Look at his background. He has to be here. When teams come back and say, well, you're not playing him. Also, who are we competing against in this bidding war? And I think that's where you're starting to get into a weird spot. The one thing I will say on the contract is you don't have to pay a transfer fee. So while he's making $1.3 or $1.4 million, you're not amortizing a transfer into MLS from another league for X millions of dollars across that contract. So it will be a lower NDP, or as you said, potentially a TAM deal. Gyasi obviously has to sign off on where he's being sent because the team won't give something up really if they can't guarantee he's interested in staying. And I don't know that Gyasi's a guy who will ask out is the last piece. So I think when push comes to shove, if there isn't the right move, if Columbus isn't getting the right offers, I think Gyasi will stay and fight for his spot. And I would be shocked if he made an issue about it. I'd be surprised if he came and even asked for a trade, depending on how the national team stuff goes. So it's a very awkward situation. Yeah. And there is, to me, there's no clear answer of how this ends outside of wake up, Colorado. You want a cheap DP? Here's a domestic guy who's already in the league. You got to give away funny money that you have a ton of because you've sold and moved and all these things. Here's your opportunity. Outside of that, I think everything else would be a surprise where he ends up.
What is the best home for Gyasi Zardes if he was to move, says Steven Terwelp. And Chairman Dave hit us up and says, I'm once again pushing the idea of Gyasi to Montreal, but Montreal is just like trying to collect them all. Like, we need everybody, like we need Ola too. Like, we have Kai now. We need Ola. Now we need Gyasi. Everyone who played number 9 for the Columbus Crew over the last 7 years has to be on our team.
Alejandro Moreno. Pick up
exactly. Andres Mendoza, we're giving you a call as well. I guess I was going to say Schoenfeld, but he just retired. Yeah. What's the best home for Gyasi if he was to move, Michael? It seems like everybody's so laser focused on the Rapids. Is that indeed the best home for him now? But what about long term? If you were Gyasi, what would you be looking for? Because he'll be a free agent, even if nobody trades for him after this year. Maybe he can stay with the Crew, but he'll be a free agent.
I think if you're Gyasi, there's a couple different ways this could play out. I agree with Gas that I don't see a move happening because the timing of this coming out. And gosh, if this was go back 6 months ago or even 7 months ago, I'd say that, hey, this jersey that I'm wearing right here would have been the perfect place. But Austin FC have filled that with Maxi Ruti. Now Austin FC have depth at the striker position. A team that if they could rework all the rules, and I know they've had a couple issues with DP signings, but a team who are desperate for anything offensive, I think of Inter Miami. I don't think long-term that's a solution, but oh man, if you can find a way to make anything work, you get any striker that you can. But I think Colorado would be the most obvious one. But with that said, Colorado's finding a way to make it work. And I don't see him leaving Columbus. Yes, Miguel Berry is the guy right now, but because Gyasi Zardes is still in the U.S. men's national team fold, all it takes for a striker is to get an important goal, and your confidence is back. Your form comes back. And if you're Columbus, you let him go and say Miguel Berry's form dips. Doesn't look too good for you.
Or injuries.
No, especially after they missed the playoffs.
Or injuries, right? This was a team that was decimated last year. And I think there's a part of you that has to say, Miguel Berry could play wide if you needed him to. You could play two up top. Whatever it is this a team that's going to willingly give up depth right now after what they went through last year? Now, the one thing I did say that I sort of am going to cross back on is if the number is low enough because no one else is bidding and they're sort of he's set on leaving or Columbus is set on trading him. If I was a team, I would take a low end risk on him. Like if I didn't, so teams I'm thinking of here are Orlando, who went out and got a DP center forward, but Goss theorem, how long does it take for him to settle? Wow, I just quoted myself there. Amazing.
I love it. I love it.
Vancouver, I don't know what Cavallini is. If you're questionable about Brian White's health, because he's already started injured this year, I think that's one where, and San Jose would be the other one just because you just collect talent if you have the ability to. Those are teams where I would say if the number is right, between 400 to 600,000 and you have the allocation money, bring him in for the year. Try and get what you can from him, make him happy so he wants to resign. And if he doesn't, it doesn't kill you completely going forward. I'm pissed that you brought up the Austin thing because how perfect would that have been for him to basically play in Greg Berhalter's system under Josh Wolf? He would have been a difference maker. God, that would have been perfect.
We are going to have too many bleeps in this show. We are on one, man. Let's talk St. Louis real quick. Dortmund keeper Roman Bürki coming on a free transfer. That's good. You talked about amortization, Dave, and for the nerds out there, basically if you sign a DP, you pay a transfer fee. That number gets baked into each year of the contract that they sign, divided equally, and that applies to the cap. So it's not just salary, and that has a way of bumping people up to be DPs or whatever it might be. That's huge. If they signed a keeper on a DP contract, we would have laughed them out of the building off the jump. It may still be, it's still a TBD. If it's a TAM deal where they're using resources, and you look around the league at teams that win trophies, generally don't do that with their goalkeepers. You don't allocate resources that way. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. But name value, that's a good one coming from Dortmund for them. And they look at his leadership and say, hey, that's what we need in our first year. And I'll give him a TBD on that one. Also linked with a Swedish center back, which is more of a profile that I would expect an expansion team to have, like a 28-year-old, like right in the center of his prime. But
the other piece on the name brand and the face of a team, Taylor Twellman just put out a tweet saying that St. Louis has 60,000 season ticket deposits for year one, and they're going to sell out.
That's not surprising.
They're going to sell out the MLS Next Pro opener. They'll be the first ever team to play in that league this year before they enter MLS. So I think to have a guy like Bürki who has name brand, but also can, start doing media, start presenting you, sort of be the face of it now, makes sense, and they think he's a difference maker at that position.
The stadium looks amazing. Everything looks amazing.
Yeah.
Me and St. Louis don't always get along, so I'm more of a KC, I'm more of a west side of Missouri type of guy than an east side, but I'm really excited for those
Charlie's
fans
on
of that city
vacation. He
to get a
texted
team.
me to ask how your KC tattoo's feeling.
Yeah, it's I gotta hit it with a little Vaseline, make sure it stays fresh. Actually, sorry, over the heart, right here behind this RSL crest on my shirt.
Man.
Paulo Guerrero, some rumors here, LAFC in San Jose. This would have got us all jacked up 5-6 years ago, but I don't believe this at all. San Jose, I don't know, maybe San Jose I'd start believing it for a second, but like Mateus is like, we just got to get one more of my guys in, baby, just one more. And also Minnesota United reportedly trading for Kamar Lawrence. Tom Bogert reporting that one because Chase Gasper is dealing with some personal issues. The substance abuse and behavior program he's entered that voluntarily. So we wish the best to Chase. I know, Dave, you educated me on this. You talked to him last year. His family's had some issues. His dad's been in bad health. We don't know what the issue with him is, but we hope that whatever it is, he finds some peace and some healing and comes back and plays the soccer we know he can play. All right, let's talk week 4. Start with the first national TV game. Of course, all the listings at MLSsoccer.com. All the information you need. Galaxy Orlando, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, Univision, TUDN, Twitter for your English audio. We've talked the doors off the Galaxy, I feel like. They're always on national TV. They have Chicharito. You make jokes at our expense about this all the time. Let's talk Orlando.
Just to say real quick, they've delivered this year. 3 national TV games, the Efra goal at Charlotte, the Chicharito goal against NYCFC, and that Seattle Galaxy game was one of the best regular season games we've seen in a couple years. So, just throwing it out there. The Galaxy, making it worth it, but continue.
It's fun. Look, honestly, they're a fun team. They have big stars. They also have the mystery box element of will the backline stand up? So it's fun. Now, Orlando side of it. Michael, what have you seen from this Orlando team so far? And reminder, they're coming off a loss at home to FC Cincinnati, which we don't have a ton of data on that. What happens after you lose at home to FC Cincinnati? Not a ton of examples to go back and dig through on that, to be honest.
I think that there is a major imbalance to this Orlando team. I think they have a front four. And in that game against Cincinnati, they were set up in their 4-2-3-1, but I think they have a front four. And in soccer, your front four, they have to do, what's that word? Defend. So they have a front four that does not like to defend. Yes, attacking-wise, their resumes, it's there. But that's going to take time. A lot of these guys are new players, and Pato was here last year. The injury, this is his first full healthy season in MLS soccer play. And so it puts a lot of onus on Perea to get things right. But when you don't have the ball, I thought Cincinnati, what they did well was they were patient in their buildup, and it was the entry passes breaking the lines through that front four and the sieve of a pressure that they had. And it put Orlando under a lot of pressure throughout the game. So this is a good opportunity for them to right the wrongs and rebound, but I think it's going to take more time for them to really hit the ground running.
I feel like LA is not going to do what Cincinnati did. Cincinnati had like 270 passes in this win. They had the ball 35% of the time. Like Orlando had the ball, but sort of the issues that we've seen with Orlando over the last couple of years, Dave, is like, what do they do when they have the ball from a chance creation side of things? And now you lose DK, you lose Nani, and those two guys had a bunch of individual moments over the last couple of years that made the difference.
Miller.
You bring in Chris Mueller. You bring in Erkin Kara. You bring in Facundo Torres. Goss Theorem, second reference on the show. It's going to maybe next year. But so far, we haven't seen the best from those guys. How do you start to see the best from Orlando City in an attacking sense? And then how do you make sure you don't open yourself up on this other side? I mean, I think Michael's right. It's a balance issue right now.
And it's kind of been a balance issue for a while with Oscar Pareja teams, but especially in Orlando, where I think last year, and especially 2 years ago, it felt like they were the elite defense, their back line, their center backs, everything. And then they start to open up to attack a bit. And, there is no balance to it when they push numbers forward. They can't really defend in transition. That is one of the issues. I really like the way the pieces could fit together in this attack. I think Facundo Torres likes to come inside and be a number 10 more than Nani or Mueller did. And that opens up for Juan down that right side, who his service isn't elite, but his ability to get in the final third is. And so if you make it 20 opportunities, he'll hit on 2 or 3 of them. And now Pato, it looks like, is going to be like a second forward coming off the wing to finish for you. And Kara will take time. I mean, there's just no calculation where a center forward coming from Austria, first time really leaving that region of the world, coming to a new club which has all new attacking pieces, is going to hit immediately. And Van der Water's been in health and safety protocols, so they don't have the one guy who was around last year to sort of lean on. I think it's okay that it takes time. I think the question that I still have is what will it look like when it's right? And they are a mystery team. They are anywhere from 3rd in the East to 10th, and nothing we've seen so far changes my mind about that this season.
Well, something that comes to mind is, are they playing the right formation for the personnel that they have? If you're saying Torres likes to come in, I see them more as a team playing a 4-4-2, where or even what New England play with 3 center midfielders underneath, and you have your attacking mid as your Fulcrum and Perea, and then 2 strikers. They have 2 strikers in their ranks, and they're playing a guy who spent the majority of his career playing center forward, playing on the wing. So in that experimental phase of trying to get the balance right, you might see a formation shift.
And then the last piece about them, and we talk about this all the time, is they have depth in defensive mid, center mid, whatever you want to call those guys. And Araujo stepped in as an under-22 signing and taken over ahead of Jackson Mendez and ahead of Andres Pereira, who are 2 players that have a ton of value. One guy starts for Ecuador in World Cup qualifying and is a young player. The other one has been called into the U.S. Olympic squads and is a talented young player as well. And then you've got Junior Urso with Araujo. So they have a bunch of options in there, and I think some of them could fit in that diamond or 3-man midfield, however you want to call it, really well, that Michael's talking about. I also wonder, and this is the convo we're having with Minnesota in goal and Gyasi Zardes, depth is great, but in a salary cap league, there's a point where then you have to use it as an asset outside of your team. And I think there are a couple teams in this league that could use a piece like that. And so if Jackson Mendez is that far from the team, or Andres Pereira is, and you're just signed an under-22 guy who you're hoping will be there for a little bit and then you sell, there's probably a move that could be made if you need to bring in an experienced forward who knows this league, or bring in a true winger who can fill in on one of those wings that's maybe not Benji Michel, who's more of a second forward as well as Pato.
TBD, but it's going to be an interesting one on Saturday. Galaxy, Chicharito has a good start to the season. I think he's second in the league in expected goals. He's getting opportunities. He's scoring them. Will Efra start? Can Kevin Cabral live up to his potential? Douglas Costa, who got his first goal off the free kick. Haven't talked a ton about him. He's still working his way in. And what's the real back line for Greg Vanney? So a lot of question marks to be answered in that game. 3:30 p.m. Univision Turien Twitter has the English audio for you on Saturday. How about Sunday? The Verde. Verde hosting Seattle. Perfect timing. Boy, you know what? If you were going to get Seattle, when would you want to get them? You would want to get them off short rest, coming off a trip to Mexico to León in a high leverage match when they don't have their starting center forward healthy, when Nico Lodero's a TBD. Michael, I'm not saying it's just like, they've been handed points. Not saying that at all. But the schedule has been very nice. Very good.
If we were talking, if SKC got this schedule, would we be saying this as well?
Well, what Weeby would do is he would pull his sleeve back and you'd see the tattoo of Benny Failhaber. And when Weeby flexes, Benny goes like this.
Hey, shout out to Benny. Benny was the real deal.
So 4:30 p.m. FS1 Fox Deportes. How are you going to experience? You calling this on the radio? What's your?
No, I'm going to be a fan when the national team, when the national TV guys come in. Adrian Healy and I get to be fans. I will be there at Q2 Stadium, taking it all in, and this is a great opportunity for Austin FC. I said that last week when we were doing our match against Portland. It was the first test on the road and first real test in measuring up against one of the higher standard teams in the league in the last couple seasons. Now you get a second opportunity against, I think, I don't know what the power rankings have said this week. I haven't looked at it, but I put Seattle number one. I think the Seattle Sounders, after that León game and coming off the LA Galaxy team, you were playing against the best team in Major League Soccer. I know we're early on, but they are right now based on form. Now, what troubles me about Seattle in a lot of ways is coming off that rest, does Rui Diaz, are you bringing him in to the roster and to the fold to be ready for Austin FC? Because the last time he played at Q2 Stadium, holy smokes. I remember I was on a flight heading back to Austin, and I saw the worldie of a goal he hit from midfield.
With the kids.
The kids were all right that night. But if you get Rui Diaz healthy and playing in that game, that's a difference maker for Seattle. But I tip the tide over to Austin just because of the short rest. And this is a different Austin team. Against Portland, I saw a maturation. It had a playoff-type atmosphere to the game, playoff-type intensity. I thought they were robbed of a potential penalty kick because there were two handballs that happened on Rasmussen that they should have been called or at least VAR reviewed. But those happen at this point in the season, so I've been told. But yeah, I know it's going to be a good one. I can't predict what's going to happen, but I know it's going to be a really close competitive game.
I agree with you. I thought we talked about this as the first test, and while Austin didn't get the result, it felt like they played their soccer at a high level in a tough atmosphere, which we didn't see towards the middle of last season. So it felt like that was established. I want to ask you two questions. One is, going into this game, is the staff, did they not feel that Kip Keller's at the level to play after those two starts, or was there another reason he was swapped out? And then the other one is Valencia and Danny Pereira. And where do you think we stand now 3 games in of how the coaching staff views that battle?
Well, those are two great questions. So talking with Josh Wolf going into the Portland game, that was a surprise for us when we got the lineup sheet. And Josh was very simple about it. He said he went with experience in that decision to bring in Ruben Gabrielson. And it didn't pay off per se in the final result, but those are the decisions that Josh gets to make now because he has depth at his disposal. Last season, that was probably someone else that, if you weren't going to play Kip, that was someone playing out of position potentially. And with the Valencia and Danny Pereira battle in midfield, I thought Danny Pereira, I think he's been excellent in the first 2.5 games, I would say. And when you play against Portland, that's always a big ask to go up against Diego Charas, who's been doing it for over a decade, is one of the standard bearers in that position. But I think he's had a strong start to the season, and he's going to make Johan Valencia earn that position. And you want that, and that's how it makes your team better. Competition. Another guy who I think is making a stake and making a claim to his position is Ethan Finley. He came in and he provided with and got in behind a few times and caused Portland some problems with some half chances. So Josh has some lineup decisions to make going into this Seattle game, and those are the worries and the things that you want as a coach.
It is wild that a year ago John Gallagher was the most dangerous attacking player, and now he's a sub at left back because you've got Finley, you've got Maxi Arruti, you've got Driussi. It's definitely a different team. I told you a week ago I needed a little bit of proof. I felt some of that, but this is, again, in MLS, similar to what we're seeing with RSL. If you have 9 points out of 4 games, no matter who's coming off what, you can't take those points away, right? You're giving yourself that lead to sort of play from that Austin just didn't get last year.
Tell me about Driussi so far. Not just, we see the obvious moments, but more inside this team, sort of behind the scenes. What is he as a player and a personality within this group?
I'll start off as a person and a personality. He's a really funny guy. I found out with some of the pranks that he's played on me in the locker room.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's extra time after dark. I'll tell you that. But no, he's a good guy. He's a family guy, and he's a team player. The one thing that I've seen from him that you typically don't see from DPs, he defends. For this Austin FC team, him and Maxi Arruti, they are the fulcrums for their press. They are the ones who are forcing turnovers. Against Inter Miami, it was a Driussi interception. He forced McVay into an errant pass, and he starts the play and finishes it with the finish. In the first goal, it was a Driussi flick that the ball went out wide, and then he's finishing plays. So he's all action, which is very different from some of the other teams he's played for. At Zenit, he was more of a second striker, attacking midfielder. At River, he was more of an attacking mid, winger at different times. But he's just an all-around honest player on both sides of the ball and a team player. And I know the guys love playing with him. And he's a difference maker. And that's been the big uptick for this team this season.
Let me throw this out there. Early MVP candidates. I'm farming out some work that I'm doing on a column here. Who would be, we have a top 5, obviously, finalists. Who would be way, way, way too early right now, the 5 MVP finalists that if you think you put it out to the league, and again, way too early, people would come back and say, these guys should be in there. So Driussi would be one of them to me.
Yeah.
Zelarayan would be another.
The obvious one.
Yeah.
I think Chicharito.
Yeah. Chicharito's 3. You got to go 5.
So I don't really understand this.
Klimala?
Or Lewis Morgan.
Yeah.
Right.
Klimala's numbers, his underlying numbers are off the charts. He's top 5 in expected assists.
Yeah.
I think he's number 1
the best in the league.
goals. But Lewis Morgan's giving you those performances for New York. So I think he would be in there. I would put Bobby Wood in there if this is this thing we're doing. I don't really understand what we're doing.
I don't either. I'm trying to figure it out right now. You're my guinea pig.
Because he scores the winner against Seattle. He's a big part of the comeback against New England. They are tied for first. And I think with Krylock out and all the other pieces out, he has been sort of the fulcrum for what they've done so far. There you go.
What about Vela? Would you push Vela in?
Would I or would you?
I don't know. I'm asking, would you?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. I want to see a full 90 minutes.
What if you were
Carlos
prognosticating? What if you were having to you're having to choose into the year who you think do you think Carlos Vela will be there?
I think he'll be in the conversation, but of that team, to have a good Carlos Vela, the guy who's going to need to be back to the form he was in last year is Chicho Arango.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see. I'll have to come up with that on my own.
Another name that
how about Shihus?
Won't be there anymore. Well, now
Gaigo Slanina and Shihus.
Now you're asking for miracles.
Come on, you got three clean sheets.
Yeah, I'd say Gazdag.
Okay.
And I think this is a Philly team that's going to push at the top. I don't know what Ure is because we haven't seen him on the field. It doesn't feel like Carranza is the guy that Doyle thought he'd be this year for the Golden Boot. But I think Gazdag sitting underneath those two forwards is dangerous. He scores goals himself. I think he'll have the stats. I also think Philly will be up there, and it should be Andre Blake. It could be the center back pairing. It could be Jose Martinez. None of those guys are going to get votes. So I think Gazdag's going to get himself in the convo.
Speaking of ESPN Plus Game of the Week, that Dave took, perfect lead-in right there. ESPN Plus, 1 p.m. Eastern, Saturday, NYCFC hosting the Union. Give us your quick sell. We'll give some sells on the ESPN Plus games, hit the mailbag, and get out of here.
Eastern Conference Finals rematch from last year. Obviously, Philly wants blood. They were missing 9 players for that one. They are still talking about it. They're still upset about it. Jose Martinez, I think, was quoted saying, "We know we were there." So everything for them to play for. And as I said, NYCFC, their attack has been gorgeous to watch so far this year. Talis Magno brings a whole new element. Santi Rodriguez is an elite attacker right now, the way he's playing, Maxi as well. So you've got talent at every position on both these teams. You've got rivalry. You've got a little bit of angst. Can Philly get one over when NYCFC sort of focused on other things? Or does NYCFC sort of set a tone in this one? Because I think if you come off that Montreal game with a win here, you sort of say, we're going to compete in both competitions, and we're the team to beat in the East.
By the way, NYCFC just announced Gabriel Pereira, U22 signing from Corinthians, 20-year-old. So, yeah, he's a left-footed forward. They just keep on stacking the young talent within that team. So we'll see how he fits into what they're doing.
This was what Dyla sort of said. There's one move to be made. He'll probably be a wing option because he wants to leave that spot open for Magno to go in there, and Eber as well.
I will give you 2 ESPN Plus games of the week because is 2 a list? I feel like you got to hit 3 to make it a list.
I think you'll find a third game to sneak in.
Yeah, this is the beginning of a list. So top of both conferences, Real Salt Lake, who say we never give any love to them, but what's false? We led the last show, and I'm wearing my dummy Krylock jersey right now, hosting Nashville SC as the road trip continues for the Yotes. That's Saturday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Plus. Top of the table clash. RSL keeps saying, hey, we're for real, we're for real, we're for real. Well, this is a great opportunity to continue to prove that and stack those points to where nobody can argue because you're sitting with multiple games under your belt up at the top. That should be an interesting one. Still just waiting to see if Nashville SC can get something going on the attacking side and who that'll come through. I don't think we've seen the best of Hani Mukhtar just yet. Not the same influence he had last year, but of course, get him home. That could change. The other one that I was going to throw out top of the table is Red Bulls and Crew.
Ooh.
So you have RSL. I guess Nashville's not top of the table, but RSL is. And then Columbus is top in the East, and New York are just behind them. So, look, we talked a lot about Gyasi Zardes, so it'll be curious just to see the lineups, who's going to be in them. We talked to Patrick Kumala real briefly there, but his underlying numbers are crazy, even though some Red Bulls fans aren't super happy about the final product. They've been fun. They're at home. You know they're going to press hard. We will see how the Crew try to play through that and the game plan that Caleb Porter has. So, 2 really talented teams. Top of the table in the East, top of the table for RSL in the West. Those are my 2 games. What about you, Michael?
I am going to go top and just inch my way down towards the bottom. I'm FC Cincinnati and Inter Miami. We'll start with
chaos.
Get the flares and the fireworks. Anders, hit me with the fireworks. Bah, 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 bah. So Inter Miami. Oof.
There was another quote this morning from Phil Neville saying he might have to start benching people, and it seemed like he was talking about Higuain.
Oh, man.
So apparently this week of training has gone extremely well after his comments at the weekend.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to – it's always difficult when you're only a couple weeks into the season and the manager is now outing players that it's usually not a good sign for a good start to the season. Inter Miami – one, the Breck Shea era at center back, I don't know what went into the thought process behind that, but I hope after that red card against LAFC, it is over.
You can't make the decision now this week, right? He's not even on the table.
It's been made for him.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Breck is most effective for this Miami team, and he had moments last year for Inter Miami playing at left wing or left wing back. If you're going to play a back three, you got to put him there. But you're hamstringing yourself when you play him in the left of a back three system. And the one half bright spot has been the Ecuadorian Campaña, who he scored. I got to see him score at Q2 Stadium, well-taken goal against Austin FC. And he's got that hunger. He's a guy that looks like he's on a different wavelength from the rest of the team. He can create his own chances. And in the first game of the season, he should have scored a goal against Chicago, hit one off the bar, but he's got a little bit extra to him. Outside of that, this is a team that they're struggling. And for FC Cincinnati, oh man, it was a Skyline Chili miracle, baby. You knew I had to hit you up.
Well, unfortunately, what comes after Skyline Chili usually?
I think Gold Star.
I was saying more. As it works the way through your body. I was just hoping that's not the post.
Well, it won't be, because they have a formation that suits them better, which is playing that back three system. I think it takes the onus a bit more off of Jeff Cameron and Tyler Blackett. They're able to play those entry passes in, and those are two good players who are good on the ball, and they're able to show that more rather than playing as a back four. And what I like about it more is that Lucho Acosta still plays as that number 10, and Yuya Kubo, rather than playing as a defensive midfielder in that midfield three, in that 4-3-1-2 system they've tried the first couple weeks. He's now a box-to-box midfielder and is allowed to get in the box a bit more. The difference maker for them, two players, Lucho Acosta and now Brandon Vasquez. I love this kid. I think as he progresses, he's very physical. He's just a pure striker. He thrives off service. Now they have wingbacks that can get the ball wide, get service in for him, and I think this could be a breakout year for him.
All right, MLSsoccer.com. All the TV listings if you need to figure out what you're going to watch, all the scores, all the highlights, all the stats, everything you need right there, MLSsoccer.com and the MLS app. Mailbag time, 401-2060-MLS. Extra time at MLSsoccer.com. We'll do one, which is Loons Coast to Coast asking who are the most underrated DPs of all time. The guys that got all the credit but still seem like they weren't talked about quite enough, or maybe didn't get enough credit. We usually go with the bust conversation. So this was a kind of a refresh that I liked. Mm-hmm. Throw some names out. What do you guys think?
My opening name is Marco Di Vaio. And I think Montreal fans won't say that, but for everyone else, I don't think they watched enough or saw him enough, or I don't think he comes up enough. Also, Drogba then comes after. So when people think of DP center forwards in Montreal, they're thinking Drogba. But Di Vaio was an elite finisher in this league, and they were competitive every year that he was on that team.
That's a good shout. Nacho Piatti would probably go into that. We talked about it earlier in CCL, but I don't think he really got recognized for being the level of player that he was until the end, after the CCL runs, after the playoff triumphs against TFC, etc. But he is one of the best players in this league's history, and I still don't know that everybody really thinks about him that way. I'll throw out one from my early days of MLS fandom, Juan Pablo Angel.
JPA.
Feels like a lot of water's gone under the bridge at this point, but he was the center forward when he came into the league with those Red Bulls team, and some of the things he did were just absolutely spectacular. Maybe if they win that MLS Cup, he has a different legacy. Maybe if he doesn't play for both LA teams in the same season, he has a different legacy. I don't think anybody's ever been a DP for both Chivas USA and the Galaxy, and certainly not in the same season. But he's one of those guys, when you look back at the history of this league, I don't think he'll get as much shine as he should, and he sort of opened some doors and continues to open doors as a scout for LAFC, I believe, still in South America. So he would be one. How about even an MVP? David Ferreira might not get the love that he deserves over the course of time. And Pipa Higuain's not an MVP, but I still think those years in Columbus we might not give credit to either.
And a guy that I remember playing against I hated playing against him, Alvaro Saborio.
Yeah.
This guy
Sabo, man,
was an animal that just could post up on you. Just when he wanted to take over a game, those RSL teams, when they had your Beckmans, your Javi Moraleses, they now had a focal point of a striker. Him and that Fabian Espindola tandem. Oof, those are some golden years for our RSL.
Mm-hmm. Who else?
You know what? I have a guy for you. Because of injury woes, Mauro Diaz.
Yeah.
Mauro Diaz.
We expect
if he stayed healthy.
If Doyle was here, he would have been all over that one. All over
Mauro Diaz.
So I think with Piatti, I think Diaz as well, right? They were MVP finalists, but if he had stayed healthy, they probably go to an MLS Cup. And then he's in a conversation that he didn't end up in.
Convo.
Then he ends up in the Middle East when he probably would have gone to Europe if he had stayed healthy. So I agree with you. I think he was respected in this league, but the injuries changed the way he's looked back on now and sort of talked about. And it's...
I think about one that was a young guy that got elevated and then had an incredible career and is now back, and we'll see him obviously tonight in CCL, and Freddie Montero.
Yeah.
Like the foundation he helped set in Seattle, and we've just sort of taken for granted that the Sounders are going to be there every single year now. He helped start that, and he wasn't a DP when he arrived. He was a prospect. Came in, earned the DP contract, scored some legendary goals. I still see the one from their expansion year, from super deep. Had some really marquee moments in Cascadia to keep it there. Mauro Rosales, he moved around in Cascadia, but was I think underrated in his time. And Pedro Morales had moments where it was like a little bit like Mauro Diaz, where it was like, dang, if this dude could have stayed healthy, like what could have been.
Yeah, I don't know that it was health with him or it just all went wrong. I do have his jersey on Vancouver, but if you're talking Vancouver, then you're talking Eric Hossley. The greatest goal in MLS history. San Antonio legend, Eric Hossley. Let's go.
Hey, it's my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Can I just, I'm going to throw out a random one. My KC tattoo here is throbbing for Claudio Lopez. It's the Wizards one that goes above the Sporting Kansas City one. I don't know if he's underrated, but it was just incredible to me thinking back on it that Claudio Lopez of Valencia, of America, of Argentina, of all these incredible moments, decided that he wanted to come to Kansas City for 2 years when they were still the Wizards and still playing at Community America Ballpark to play his soccer there. Pretty incredible stuff.
No Omar Bravo.
Saw him score. And then that one, I think that's properly rated. All right, that's it for us. Big thanks to Michael for joining us. Enjoy the weekend, everybody. For producing Anders, David Goss, I'm Andrew Wiebe. Adios. Congratulations, you made it through more than an hour of extra time. That means you love the show, and if you love the show, you probably want more episodes. Click right here for more episodes of Extra Time, and here to subscribe to the MLS YouTube channel. Thanks for following along.